The volume of a cone is 1/3 the volume of a cylinder with the same base area, capital B, and height, h. So what would the formula for the volume of a cone be? Take a moment to pause this video to think about it, and when you're ready for the answer, unpause it. Similar to a pyramid, the volume of a cone is equal to 1/3 times the area of the base times its height. But in a cone, the base is always a circle. So we can replace the variable capital B in the formula with pi times the radius squared, because that's always the area of a circle. So that makes the revised formula for the volume of a cone to be 1/3 times pi times the radius squared times the height. And the volume of a sphere is 2/3 the volume of a cylinder with the same base area, capital B, and the height of h. If you remember from an earlier video, we saw that 3 cones were used to make the volume of a cylinder, and 2 of those cones made the volume of the sphere, and that's how we get the 2/3 times the volume of the cylinder. So take a moment to pause this video to think about the formula, and when you're done and ready for it, unpause it. So again, we know that the volume of a sphere is 2/3 the volume of a cylinder. So we can start off with 2/3 times pi times the radius squared times the height. But then the height of a sphere is actually its diameter, or 2 times the radius. So if we substitute 2r in for h in the cylinder formula, we get 2/3 times pi times the radius squared times 2r. Well, if we multiply r squared times r, we get r cubed, and 2/3 times 2 is 4/3, and pi remains in the formula. So the final volume for a sphere is 4/3 times pi times the radius cubed. How much ice cream can a Friendly's waffle cone hold if it has a diameter of 6 inches and its height is 10 inches? Use 3 14/100 as the value of pi. And note that just ice cream within the cone is being measured, not what is on top. So the amount of ice cream that will be able to fit inside of the cone is equivalent to the volume of the cone. And the volume of a cone is equal to 1/3 times pi times the radius squared times the height. Well, we know its diameter is 6 inches. So d is 6 inches, therefore its radius is 3 inches. And we know that the height is 10 inches. So we can substitute these values into the formula to get 1/3, and instead of writing pi out, we can write 3 14/100, and our radius we found was 3 squared, and the height is 10. Well, 1/3 of 3 squared is really 3, because we're going to keep the constant there. 3 squared is 9. And then we can reduce this to be 1 in the denominator and 3 here with the 9, because again, 1/3 of 9 is 3. So now let's multiply 3 14/100 times 3 times 10. And when we do that, we get 94 2/10 cubic inches. So that's how much ice cream can fit inside of the Friendly's waffle cone. And here are the calculations to answer this question, and it does indeed match our solution that we found of 94 2/10 cubic inches. If the radius of a sphere is 5 5/10 centimeters, what is its volume? Use 3 14/100 as the value of pi. Well, we know that the volume of a sphere is equal to 4/3 times pi times the radius cubed. Well, we know that the radius of this sphere is 5 5/10, or 5.5. So if we substitute that value in for the radius and 3 14/100 in for the value of pi, we will have this formula that we will use to calculate these values. Now let's substitute them in and figure out what that is. So we have 4/3 times 3 14/100 times 5 5/10, or 5.5 cubed. And that becomes 696, and let's round it to the nearest hundredths place and make it 56/100. And this is cubic centimeters. And as we can see with the calculations that are shown here, that the volume is indeed 696 56/100 cubic centimeters, which is what we had calculated when we worked out the problem.